Okay, so let's get all the simple things out of the way. The Alvin and the Chipmunks movies suck. The Chipmunks themselves are annoying, and their cancerous singing is the icing on the cake. In fact, most of the screen time in these movies put me to my limit. Like, just some of the songs were so painful to get through that it made me wanna kill myself. But a line mentioned from The Last of Us that I will mention in this video: when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. What I am referring to as the light are the two characters, Dave Seville and Ian Hawke, one of the greatest protagonist-antagonist rivalries in fictional history. A rivalry so great, I would consider it on the same level as Batman and the Joker, as well as Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter. We will begin this analysis with the start of it all, the first Alvin and the Chipmunks movie. Now both Dave Seville, played by Jason Lee, and Ian Hawke, played by David Cross, sort of have unexplainable pasts, aside from once being best friends in college, both wanting to pursue a career in music. Well, you'd think they'd be best friends now, right? Well, not exactly. In fact, they are complete polar opposites. Dave Seville is struggling to make it in the industry despite his consistent attempts. Ian Hawke, on the other hand, has everything. He is a millionaire manager of a music company and can get Dave a foot in the door if he wanted to, but doesn't. In their very first scene, Ian seems like a great guy, making Dave believe that he's going places. But after he listens to Dave's song, all of that goes down the drain. We see the real side of Ian all in his first scene. He completely shits on Dave's music and lets him know that he is going nowhere. To him, other struggling artists and his best friend from college are indistinguishable. To Ian, after years of drowning himself in pride and greed, there are only two types of people for him: those who can benefit him and those who can't. It's an extremely real and adult subject matter explored in these films, which is quite common in the music industry: power and greed. Ian Hawke is a realistic interpretation of the everyday corruption that takes place behind the curtains, but he wants to be above Dave Seville enough, but not too much to the point that he will just hate his guts, because deep down, he wants to keep David close enough in case there is any crazy coincidence that Dave has something that could benefit him personally, such as a trio of talking chipmunks that can sing. I even like the clever symbolism in the first scene as David Seville is sitting down in his chair while Ian Hawke is standing above him. What this shot says is that Ian Hawke is both literally and metaphorically above David Seville. But let's talk about David Seville. Corruption in the entertainment industry is a well-known problem, but we also get a lot of struggling artists, those who want to succeed, those who are passionate, and yet still fall. That is Dave Seville. The overall first half of the movie can be pretty depressing for some, as it goes into the extremely harsh reality of this tragic character. He hates his current job, he doesn't have much of a social life, and spends all of his time focused on his music and yet still can't succeed. But an interesting detail I did not notice in these films at first is the parallel between Ian Hawke and Dave Seville. At the start of the movie, when Dave meets the Chipmunks for the first time, he didn't think his life could get any worse, until he realized that the key to his success was right there. I think this is one of the most interesting character arcs in fiction, as we see at the start. Dave does not care about the Chipmunks. As far as we know it, Dave is just using them for his own success. They aren't his kids. They mean nothing to him. He just offered them a place to sleep so they can make him rich. Sounds like someone else, right? Yeah, Ian Hawke. If we notice over the film, obviously Dave goes through a very emotional arc where he begins to overcome his existential crisis due to having more to be happy about in his life: the Chipmunks. He learns to become a father to them. He is on a path to his own inner redemption, but for a while until that, I believe he had known Ian Hawke so well that he had just started adapting some of his traits. But the Chipmunks is what stopped him from falling. But Ian Hawke's arc is the exact opposite. Over the film, we see Ian Hawke slowly descend into evil. Ian realizes that Dave now has some use to him and wants to completely take everything for his own self-gain. He uses his manipulative tactics to get into the Chipmunks' heads. Now, what completely set the Chipmunks off wanting to move in with Ian? That note earlier on in the film that Dave was writing about how he thinks the Chipmunks should go back to the forest. The note he scrapped and threw over next to the trash can near his bed that the Chipmunks ended up discovering later on. But here's something not everyone noticed. In the scene where Theodore finds the scrapped letter, this time if you look at it carefully, you'll notice it's on the opposite side of the trash can. Sure, maybe it's just a coincidence, but how does that explain how in the second scene, The paper is clearly more noticeable. I always wondered that until I noticed something in this shot. Notice anything? How the hell did Ian Hawke let himself inside the house? He just walked through the front door with all of his workers with little to no effort. Now, I don't think Ian would be stupid enough to break into their house when they're home, but if you remember the big party scene to which the Chipmunks and Dave had attended, I believe Ian Hawke had planned to have one of his guys break into Dave's house and move the scrap piece of paper to make it more easy for the Chipmunks to find. But how would Ian Hawke know about the note? That means on the night of the party, he wouldn't have hired someone to specifically find that note. I believe on the night, he hired someone to find just something, anything, one thing that could turn the Chipmunks against Dave. And once that one thing was found, Ian Hawke was notified about it straight away and sends the same person back the next day to alter the position of the note. Who is this person though? Well, the very next day we see that Ian Hawke has hired a housekeeper. I believe she would have specifically cleaned the entire house as well as put the note in a more noticeable spot. Thus, with the Chipmunks thinking about what Ian told them, how David apparently calls them rats, they would have gone scrambling through his stuff to see if he wants them. And right there, Ian Hawke's carefully thought out plan was a complete success. After he exploits the Chipmunks for a while, they get sick of it and want to move back in with Dave. But Ian will not allow that, so he literally and metaphorically traps them and tries to escape with them. At this point, we pretty much realize that he was going to make the Chipmunks slaves, if it weren't for a redeemed hero. At that point in the film, Dave Seville reaches the end of his character arc as he goes to rescue the Chipmunks. At this point of the story, he found meaning. That's the parallel of the story, how some rise where others fall. A comparison I'd like to make is that at the exact moment where Ian Hawke has completely entered darkness and loses everything, he screams, "No!" Does that remind us of any character? But by the very end, Dave Seville knew. Redemption is real.